Hi friends, it's Miss Rachel and welcome to week 2 of our story time. Last week we did the Nativity and we read the story of Jesus' birth from the Storybook Bible. This week we are doing a fun story. Last week was a true story of Jesus' birth, and this week is just a fun story called The Legend of the Candy Cane. This story reminds me of my friend and my former pastor, Pastor Dennis, because he was the first person to share this story with me. And it's just a fun story, but it also has a little bit of symbolism about the candy cane and what that means for Jesus. And so we're going to read this story and just have some fun and learn a little bit and think about what Jesus has done for us. So this is called The Legend of the Candy Cane, written by Lori Wahlberg. One dreary evening in the depths of November, a stranger rode into town. He stopped his horse in front of a lonely storefront. The windows were boarded shut and the door was locked fast, but the man looked at it and smiled and said, "It will do." All through the short gray days and the long dark nights of November, the man worked. The townspeople could hear the faint pam pam, pam pam of the hammer and the shnish shnish of his saw. They could smell the sweet, clean scent of new lumber and the deep, oily smell of new paint. But no one knew who the man was or what he was doing. The mayor hoped the man was a doctor to heal his illness. The young wives hoped he was a tailor to make beautiful dresses. The farmers hoped he was a trader to exchange their grains for goods. But the children had the strongest, deepest wish of all, a wish they did not tell their parents, a deep, quiet, secret wish that none of them said out loud. No one spoke to the man. No one asked if he needed help. They just waited and watched and wondered and wished. But one small girl watched and wondered, waited and wished longer than she could stand. And one snowy day she knocked at the stranger's door. "Hello," she said. "My name is Lucy. Do you need some help?" The man smiled warmly and nodded. Then he opened the door and Lucy stepped inside. A long counter ran down the side of the room. Bare shelves filled the opposite walls. In the back were dozens and dozens of barrels and crates. "Could you help me unpack?" the man asked. Lucy's heart sank at the sight of all the boxes. What if they were only barrels of nails and bags of flour? But she removed her dripping boots and hung her coat on a peg. On stocking feet, she crossed the rough wooden floor and knelt beside a crate. "Please open it," the man urged. Slowly, Lucy put her hand into the box and pulled out an object wrapped in tissue, round and heavy. It almost slipped through her fingers. Lucy trembled a little as she unwrapped it. It was a glass jar. Lucy gave the man a puzzled look. "Go on," his nod said. So she unpacked another glass jar, and another, until she was completely surrounded by jars of all shapes and sizes. Tall and thin, round and squat, jars with lids and jars without. "Now," the man said, "for something to put inside," as he pulled over a huge crate stamped with a strange word. What do you think is going to fill these glass jars? What do you think the man is going to put inside of these clear glass jars? Let's see. As Lucy unpacked, her eyes lit up. It was candy, her favorite candy, gumdrops. "Try some," the man said. She popped one in her mouth. Now she could hardly unwrap fast enough. Peppermint sticks, taffy, lollipops, chewing gum. Wide-eyed, she looked at the man. "We wished," Lucy said. "Yes, I know," said the man. "And here it is. Welcome to Sonneman's Candy Store. I am John Sonneman." Soon, the small store was filled with candies, gleaming in their glass jars. Raspberry suckers and tiny lemon drops, brightly colored jawbreakers, and long tangles of licorice, pink and white peppermints for church, and butterscotch balls for company. Then, in the very last crate, was a candy that Lucy had never seen before. A red and white striped candy stick with a crook on the end. "What is this?" Lucy asked. "This," Mr. Sonneman explained, "is a candy cane. It is a very special Christmas candy." "Why?" Lucy asked. "Tell me," Mr. Sonneman said. "What letter does it look like?" Lucy took the candy and turned it in her hand. "J," she said. "Yes," Mr. Sonneman smiled. "J is for Jesus, who was born on Christmas Day." "Now turn it over. What does it remind you of?" Lucy turned the candy in her hand. She peered down intently. "I know," she said finally. "It's like a shepherd's staff." "Who were the first people to find out about Jesus' birth?" Mr. Sonneman asked. "Shepherds in the field," Lucy answered, "watching over their flocks by night." "But, Mr. Sonneman, what are the stripes for?" Lucy asked. The man's eyes grew sad. The prophet Isaiah said, "By his stripes we are healed." Before he died on the cross, Jesus was whipped, and he bled terribly. The red reminds us of his suffering and his blood. "But then," Mr. Sonneman continued, "the candy is white as well. When we give our lives to Jesus, his blood washes away our sins, making us white and pure as snow." "That," he said, "is the story of the candy cane." "Is it a secret?" Lucy asked. Mr. Sonneman looked at her for a long moment. "It's a story that needs to be told," he said. "Will you help me share it?" It was now the depths of December. The town was whipped round by blizzard winds. For days the sun hid itself. But every morning Mr. Sonneman and Lucy ventured out. They wore heavy woolen coats and bright hand-knit scarves, and in their stiff, mittened fingers, they each held a bag. They went to every house in town. They traveled to every farm in the country. They knocked on every door. In every home, they told a story. They left a small gift, and they gave an invitation. On the afternoon of Christmas Eve, the sun finally broke through the clouds, and Sonneman's candy store officially opened. The mayor came, feeling better than he felt in days. The young wives came, dressed in their beautiful smiles. The farmers came, eager to trade grain for Christmas gifts. The children ran in dizzy circles. Yes, their wish had come true. Yes, they had come to share in the opening of the candy store. But they shared something more, something bigger, something better. On that Christmas Eve, they shared the story of the candy cane. They told the miracle of Christ's birth, the misery of his death, and the mercy of his love. And that's the story of the candy cane. And right here it gives us a little history of the candy cane. The traditional candy cane was born over 350 years ago when mothers used white sugar sticks as pacifiers for their babies. Around 1670, the choir master of Cologne Cathedral in Cologne, Germany, bent the sticks into canes to represent a shepherd's staff. He then used the white candy canes to keep the attention of the small children during the long nativity service. The use of the candy canes during the Christmas service spread throughout Europe. In Northern Europe, sugar canes decorated with sugar roses were used to brighten the home at Christmas time. In the mid-1800s, the candy cane arrived in the United States when a German-Swedish immigrant in Wooster, Ohio, decorated the spruce tree with paper ornaments and white sugar canes. The red stripe was added to the candy cane at the turn of the century, when peppermint and wintergreen were added and became the traditional flavors for the candy cane. Some sources say that a candy maker in Indiana developed the candy cane as a witness of Christ's love. While we may never know the full history of the candy cane, we can share in the truth behind its symbol, the truth of Christ's birth and redemption and the gift of his love. Friends, I love the story of the candy cane. I love learning about some history, which is really fun. And I love the reminder that it sets for us. That J is for Jesus. We think about the shepherd's staff, which can be the shepherds who were the first people to learn about Jesus' birth, but also in the Bible, it describes God as our good shepherd. So I always think of that too when I think of the candy cane. And then the 2 stripes, the red because Jesus died for us, but the white because when we believe in Jesus, our sins are as white as snow. I have a few activities that you can do that you can find at Bakerstown's website, www.bakerstownumc.org. There's some printables for you there. Another really fun activity that my kids always love to do with this story is to do a candy cane hunt. It's just like an Easter egg hunt. You can hide candy canes throughout your house, or if it's nice, we really like to do it outside because it gives us space to run around and just go out. I know some people like candy canes and some people don't. It's just a fun thing to do. But there's a lot of different activities that you can do with this story. I hope you have a blessed and wonderful and awesome week. And I will see you next week for another favorite story that I have that I'm really, really excited about. So I hope you guys have an awesome week. I hope you get to eat some candy canes or make some candy canes or do some science experiments with candy canes. There's lots of options for you. And I hope that maybe you think of the candy cane in a new light.